Canada didn't storm out. They didn't rant on live TV. They didn't threaten retaliation. They just wrote it into law. And now, in 2025, entire US states are being pulled under. When President Trump reignited his America First trade war, hammering Canada with tariffs on steel, lumber, and even fresh produce, Washington called it a show of strength. Conservative media hailed it as patriotic. But Canada? They chose precision over noise. No press conference. No shouting match. Just cold, calculated legislation, 7 new laws, each one targeting a key pillar of US exports. And now, the blowback is seismic. From Illinois cornfields to Nevada casinos, US industries that quietly relied on Canadian buyers are hemorrhaging revenue. It's not a boycott. It's a policy pivot. A national divorce hidden beneath polite diplomacy. One law bans the import of US dairy and grains grown with specific pesticides. Another blocks American auto parts that fail new green standards. A third rewrites energy trade rules, strangling exports from US states without notice. On the surface, Canada still smiles. But behind closed doors, they're pulling billions out of US supply chains. And the fallout? Devastating. Illinois farmers can't move their harvest. Ohio's factories are stalling. Washington's tech exports are under review. North Carolina's textile sector is bleeding contracts. Pennsylvania's dairy producers are pleading for federal relief. And in Nevada? Tourism numbers from Canada, this isn't just a trade spat. It's a full-scale rebalancing. And worst of all, Washington wasn't ready. They thought Canada wouldn't dare. But they did. Quietly. Strategically. Legally. In today's video, we'll break down the 7 laws Canada just passed and the 6 American states collapsing because of them. If you think this can't happen to your state, think again. Like, subscribe, and stay with us. What's happening to our neighbors might just be America's next economic earthquake. Let's start with the laws, because they didn't come out of nowhere. After years of mounting frustration over American tariffs, unpredictable diplomacy, and product quality concerns, Canada's Parliament passed 7 new laws between March and June 2025. These weren't headline grabbers. They were surgical. Each targeted a high-volume US export industry, chosen not just for economic impact, but for leverage. Law number 1. The Agricultural Purity Act bans Canadian imports of crops grown with glyphosate and 5 other US legal pesticides. It sounds like environmental policy, but it's laser-aimed at Illinois and Ohio, where corn and soybean exports rely heavily on these chemicals. Before this law, over 70% of Illinois corn exports went to Canada, worth billions. But silos are full, shipping routes silent, and farmers face bankruptcy. Grain cooperatives have issued emergency warnings, and yet the U.S. Department of Agriculture has been slow to respond. Law number 2. The Sustainable Auto Framework sets strict emission and production standards for all vehicle components entering Canada. It invalidates a huge portion of US-made auto parts, especially those produced in Ohio and Pennsylvania. This single law has frozen over 40% of cross-border auto trade. Ohio's plants are laying off workers weekly. Pennsylvania's steel and aluminum processors have seen contracts vanish overnight. Law number 3. The Clean Energy Transition Mandate halts oil and gas imports from regions that fail to meet Canada's new carbon benchmarks. Though aimed broadly, it directly disrupts energy trade with Washington state, which had quietly become a hub for LNG exports and refined fuels to Western Canada. Tanker traffic through Puget Sound is down 62%, and small port towns are collapsing under the weight of lost revenue. Law number 4. The Responsible Retail Act eliminates tax deductions for Canadian businesses that import retail goods from U.S. brands not certified under Canada's new labor transparency rules. This especially hurts North Carolina's massive textile and apparel industry. Brands like Hanes, VF Corporation, and others face exclusion from Canadian store shelves unless they comply with expensive new audits. Export volume is already down 35%. Factories are shutting their doors. The industry is calling it death by ethics. Law number 5. The National Food Safety Harmonization Bill introduces stricter inspection standards on meat and dairy, targeting outdated FDA processing standards. It wipes out tens of millions in dairy exports from Pennsylvania, a state that depended on Canada for nearly 25% of its cheese and milk product exports. Processing facilities in Lancaster and rural parts of the state are cutting jobs, citing shipments stuck at the border or turned away outright. Law number 6. The Digital Sovereignty Act imposes data localization and privacy restrictions that hit Washington's massive tech sector. Companies like Amazon and Microsoft, which manage cloud storage and AI services for Canadian firms, are now required to build costly data centers inside Canada to stay compliant. That's billions in lost contracts, and even more in lost leverage. Tech workers across Seattle are already being told to brace for hiring freezes and budget cuts. Law number 7. The Foreign Tourism Accountability Bill subtly revises travel incentives, tax deductions, and airport landing fees, making trips to the U.S. less attractive for Canadian travelers while boosting domestic tourism. This hits Nevada right in the heart. Canadian tourists once made up a major chunk of Vegas visitors. But now, with airfare up and travel perks gone, bookings have plummeted. Casinos are reporting empty floors. Entertainment venues are scaling back shows. Tourism is bleeding quietly, and no one in Congress is talking about it. Together, these laws form a quiet blockade. There's no open declaration, no angry speeches, just an economic firewall that's choking U.S. states one by one. Canada isn't trying to win a trade war. They're moving on, diversifying, replacing American goods with EU imports, domestic alternatives, and Asian suppliers. It's not personal. It's structural, strategic, permanent. And yet, in Washington, D.C., the response has been shockingly muted. Senators from affected states are begging for hearings, but the noise of election season and partisan infighting drowns them out. The Biden administration offers vague promises. The Trump-aligned opposition blames it all on Democrats. And in the middle? Factory workers, farmers, small business owners, people who never cared about foreign policy until it came for their jobs. Coming up, we'll break down exactly how these laws are impacting Nevada, North Carolina, and Illinois, 3 states on the edge of an economic cliff. And we'll explain why this quiet shift might be just the beginning. Because if Canada can do it without a fight, imagine what other nations might be planning next. Let's zoom in on the 6 U.S. states most affected, starting with Nevada. For decades, Las Vegas counted on Canadian tourists to fill its hotels, casinos, and entertainment venues. In 2019, over 1.2 million Canadians visited Nevada. By 2025, that number's down over 60%. Canada's new Foreign Tourism Accountability Bill quietly stripped away all the incentives that once made Vegas trips so affordable. The result? Empty hotel blocks, shrinking tips for service workers, and shows canceling mid-season due to poor ticket sales. One Vegas casino manager said it best, "It's like they vanished overnight." Next is North Carolina, whose textile industry relied on Canadian retailers for steady orders. Canada's Responsible Retail Act now requires expensive labor audits for every brand selling into the country. For multinational companies, adapting is costly. For small to mid-sized North Carolina manufacturers, it's a death sentence. Dozens of facilities in Gastonia, Greensboro, and Fayetteville have reported major contract losses. Many have shut down entirely. Layoffs are mounting. And with each closed plant, ripple effects slam local communities that depended on those jobs. Then there's Illinois, ground zero for American corn and soy exports. The Agricultural Purity Act wiped out nearly $2.1 billion in crop sales to Canada overnight. The act bans imports grown with 6 specific pesticides still legal in the US but outlawed in Canada. Most Illinois farmers had no warning, no backup buyers, and no leverage. They're sitting on silos full of corn they can't move. And worst of all, global buyers are starting to follow Canada's lead, questioning US standards. If that happens, Illinois agriculture could take a generational hit. Ohio faces a dual blow. Its agriculture overlaps with Illinois, suffering from the same pesticide bans. But it's also deeply tied to the auto sector. Canada's Sustainable Auto Framework raised emission and manufacturing standards on all vehicle parts entering its market. That single act has shut down supply lines into Ontario's massive car factories, supply lines that once depended heavily on Ohio-made parts. Factories in Dayton, Toledo, and Cleveland are reducing shifts. Thousands of workers are on notice. The industry, already fragile post-COVID, is entering freefall. Pennsylvania is reeling too, especially its dairy and steel industries. The National Food Safety Harmonization Bill pushed new health inspections on U.S. dairy products, citing outdated FDA standards. Overnight, Pennsylvania's exports of milk, cheese, and processed dairy collapsed. Facilities in rural areas like Juniata and Somerset counties are laying off workers and dumping product. On the industrial side, the Sustainable Auto Framework also crippled Pennsylvania's steel processors. With auto parts orders drying up, plants in Pittsburgh are down to skeleton crews. The quiet bleeding has begun. And finally, Washington State, which many forget is deeply tied to Canada's energy and tech ecosystems. The Clean Energy Transition Mandate wiped out LNG exports to Canada's west coast. Tanker traffic from ports like Anacortes has dropped by more than half. Port towns are collapsing as revenue disappears. But the bigger blow might be digital. Canada's Digital Sovereignty Act forced American tech giants to build data infrastructure inside Canada to continue doing business there. For companies like Amazon and Microsoft, based in Seattle, the added cost is immense, and not all contracts are worth saving. Entire divisions are now being restructured, and workers are being let go in waves. What's striking about all this isn't just the impact, but the silence. There were no threats from Canada, no press events, no insults, just legislative precision. And that silence worked. Washington wasn't prepared. Governors from these 6 states have sent letters. Senators are holding emergency press conferences. But it's already too late. Canada has already shifted its supply chains, signed new EU deals, and locked in Asian partnerships. The US isn't being punished, it's being replaced. This isn't some short-term protest. It's a structural shift. Canada's not looking back, and other US trading partners are watching. If Canada can do it without a fight, imagine what Mexico, Japan, or the EU might do next. The question now isn't whether American states can recover, it's whether DC is even paying attention. Coming up next, we'll look at how the Biden and Trump camps are responding, or not, and what this economic fallout means for 2026 and beyond. But first, if your state's on this list, or even if it's not yet, don't tune out. This story's just getting started. Canada didn't retaliate. They rewrote the rules. From steel mills in Pittsburgh to data centers in Seattle, the silence from Ottawa is echoing across American towns. If allies are making it law to move on, who's left to count on? Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe. This isn't over yet.